Welcome, Colony Nation, to the Colonie Pit, where we go down memory lane and revisit the land of garnet and gold. Today, we have a very special edition of the Colonie Pit, our first ever top whatever list, I guess you want to say it, the greatest of list of maybe more to come. But today's theme is going to be top athletes of the 80s and the 90s in Colonie. But before we get to our list and how we're going to do this, John, do you want to introduce our two special panel guests?
Rex, thanks a ton. I hope everyone's doing well. I just want to say thanks to those subscribers that are following the channel. Much appreciated. And we have a couple fan favorites from Colonie. Frank Ferraro, who's joined us back for stint number 2, and Tony Martinez, who's going to join us for stint number 2 as well. So I think we have our contestants ready to help us with this first ever. And also, too, just a caveat, I think we're going to have numerous parts because I'm sure we're going to forget some names. And if the folks listening out there, they say, hey, what about this person? We can do a part 2, and you should join us to help flesh out the rest of these Colonie greats. On that note, I'll turn back over to Pat.
Exactly. So, we're going to kind of go through a list here, how we're going to do this today. And let me just first preface this, that there's no real scientific formula to this. So if you're sitting at home watching this saying this is just 4 guys giving their opinion, I would say you are exactly correct on that. So hopefully no one takes this too seriously. We'll have some fun with it. But what we're going to do today is we're going to each give our greatest athlete of the 80s and 90s. That's going to be one person. We're each going to give that pick. And then we're each going to give our first team, second team, and third team picks of about 4 to 5 guys each. And then depending on time, maybe we'll get into honorable mention and some other athletic related topics. But with that, we are going to just go right for the jugular right now with our greatest athlete of all time, the GOAT of Colonie athletics in the 80s and 90s.
Ooh.
And let me see. You know what, Frank? I'm going to let you kick it off with your pick.
Ooh.
You know, I just changed mine.
Okay.
As you were talking, I went back and forth with these two individuals. This should be no surprise, but I'm going to go Chucky Dukes.
Okay.
Ooh, good pick.
Just because he was the trendsetter. He put Colonie football back on the map, in my opinion. But Chad's a close second. Chad was probably the overall athlete, but Chucky was the trendsetter.
All right. I'll swing it over to John.
You know, Pat, I have a Mount Rushmore here. I agree with everything Frank said. And I looked at this based on my recollection of newspaper articles, always remembering waking up Sunday, who's in the Times Union. And there's always a picture of Chuck Chad and our good friend Dave Gamble. And I think with all 3 of those guys, and again, too, I want to put this caveat, the whole 88 team, I think there's just legends around. But I think those 3 guys made the biggest impact in Colonie athletics and football here. And I can't pick one. I think those 3 guys, in my opinion, deserve it.
So John, you're going to stick with 3. You're not going to go out on a limb?
Yeah, It pains me because it's like, you know, you look at Chuck, then you look at Chad, and then there's Dave, and to me it's a horse race, and it's going to be the first ever 3-way tie at Saratoga.
Okay.
Wow.
Was not expecting this. All right, Tony, go ahead.
So I'm going to completely disagree with that.
Wow.
All right.
I like it. We like conflict on the Colonie Pit.
But I agree with Frank. So this is where I stand with this. So when you think about Colonie football, like you said, the culture, the first name you think of, Chucky Dukes. I can't think of anyone that I played with that if you sit there and you think of garnet and gold, you wouldn't think of Chuck Dukes. And
true.
And like you said, I mean, the guy paved the way. Everyone that knows Colonie football knows Chuck. They also know Chad and Dave and Tony Valeni and everything. But I think you got to give credit when credit's due, and Chucky for sure. So he's gonna be my GOAT.
He's your GOAT.
He's gonna be the Tom Brady of Colonie Central.
Wow.
I appreciate you at least giving a pick, Tony. You know, I appreciate that. So, I guess I'm last here. So I think everyone probably who has watched me on Facebook. I kind of already previewed who my pick was, but just in case, and I'll give my reasoning for it. Chad Dukes to me is the greatest athlete of all time at Colonie. By far,
okay.
like you're never gonna convince me otherwise. And Chucky's, like, as everyone knows, a great friend, and actually just talked to him a few hours ago. But if we're talking about athlete, overall athlete, I don't think it's close. And I'll give you some reasons. First of all, Chad was on varsity 4 years football, 4 years track,
Oh, wow.
and basketball only 1 year of varsity because he was hurt his junior year. But in basketball, he made the Empire State Games for basketball, which means he was one of the top 10 to 12 basketball players in the area going into his senior year.
Wow.
To me, there's not a more complete football player than Chad Dukes overall. And, what he did in track, he did the hurdles and the long jump. He won the Eddie meet in the long jump. I just don't think versatility-wise, you're going to find a more athletic person than Chad Dukes, both in terms of the natural athleticism as well as what he accomplished on the playing field. He just and there's the eye test of actually interacting with him and playing basketball with him back in the day, and just in terms of agility, speed, strength, there's no one comparable to him in my mind as an overall athlete. I'll say better football player, better stats. I think Chucky's going to win that every time, but to me, Chad Dukes is my GOAT, and so
See, I went back and forth with that, and right now, let's not forget Chad is. Correct me if I'm wrong. Chad's a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I didn't even get into what he did, because I think we're all trying to stick to what happened during high school for the most part.
Yeah.
And, with all those guys, you can say they went on to doing great things after high school. But even then, I think Chad kind of separates himself, to Frank's point, where he played basketball and football in junior college. He played Division I football. He played professional football, both Arena League and NFL. And then when he's all done with that, he goes and gets a black belt in judo and a black belt in jiu-jitsu and competes in judo on some U.S. international teams. So, that just more, adding more fuel to the fire. But that's my pick. But I don't think there was a wrong pick here, but we're all entitled to our opinion here on the Colonie Pit.
So that's where Chad gets my because I think I remember when we were talking on the very first episode podcast, my one and only interaction with him at the Colonie Athletic Club when we were playing pickup basketball, and I saw him do things on the basketball court, and I was just like, wow, a guy this size able to move like that, and just not looking like a like a recreational basketball player. Like the guy was so. Now that you guys are talking about the Empire State Games, I'm like, okay, well that makes sense. The way he was handling the ball and everything on the court, like he just looked like a natural. So the way you're describing, like his achievements in jiu-jitsu, football, basketball, and track, I would give Chad the Jim Thorpe Award. He would be like my multi-athlete, but this is gonna be a surprise or maybe a little shocking. But like you said, how we're staying within Colonie, but post Colonie, with what athletes, with what high school classmates have gone on to do outside of Colonie, I would say outside of there, another like Jim Thorpe candidate for me is gonna be Bobby Fish to go on and do professional wrestling.
Oh, come on.
And everything. I got it. He's the Shawn Michaels, so I got it.
Oh, there he is.
I got to give him, for a guy to not look like Triple H or The Rock and able to go out and be a professional wrestler with what he's given. I think he's one of those athletes that, with what he was given in life, he made the best out of his ability. So, but that's another topic.
Yeah. We can talk about Bobby a little bit later, but anyway, all right. Well, we all gave our vote on the GOAT. John gave 3. So we'll move on from there. John has goats. He just doesn't.
I don't want to start a fight in the Duke's house, but I think Chad would win that. So I'll keep mine
Right
with
now,
the
yes.
3.
All right. Now we're going to move on to your first team picks. So we'll just keep it in the same order. Frank, give me your first team best athletes of Colony.
So I went with the obvious ones: Chad, Chucky, Gamble. I went with Greg Woodward, also off that team, good wrestler also, and a guy who maybe underrated. I don't know, Matt Carullo. Tony, you might be familiar with
Yeah,
Mr. Carullo.
yeah.
Hell of a wrestler, hell of a football player. Went to Syracuse, had a cup of coffee with Dallas Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely worthy of this list.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
John, go ahead.
So I have a
Try to keep it to
couple on
5,
here, and I actually
John, not like 15.
well, actually, so here's mine. So the one I actually played with Pop Warner, and then high school football, Lon Byers. Great track athlete, great football player. Watching them actually in Pop Warner of all things, just knew that guy had it, and playing with him in high school, another thing too. Just incredible athlete. And then after that, just looking through the yearbook, again, I'm going to go out here, just looking at Jack Aponowitz, who's our classmate, which I didn't realize was playing varsity soccer as a freshman, and talking with Mike Smith on one of our podcast episodes. Jack went down to Coastal Carolina. So hearing things about Jack, and just knowing again as a freshman, especially at Colonie playing varsity, you have legit skills. And I think after that too, there's just a lot. But I also go with my last couple guys. I'm going to just pick Mark Dels and Tyler Orvis, the runners, who, again, every time you open the newspaper, you see those guys breaking records, winning races and everything. So I think that's and my last one, I'm going to put down Sean Pratt for winning the 400-yard hurdles, set a Colony record. And I think that 90 team was 10-0 in the Suburban Council, and they set record after record. So I think all those guys would be on my first team.
Okay. All right, Tony, go ahead.
And so just to clarify, we're staying with the 80s and 90s, right?
80s and 90s, yeah. You can go up to anyone who graduated 2000, in between 1980 and 2000. We're going to include the 2000 class, but 2001 is out.
Okay. So Frank's list and my list is pretty much identical, but since we started off with the GOAT, and I put Chucky as the GOAT, obviously then first team has to be Chad. Chad, and then sitting down with Dave Gamble. And when I talked to Dave, we went to go watch the Jets play. I forget who it was, but when Dave was telling me more about his career with the Eagles, the Broncos, and everything, and I believe he got a Super Bowl ring. Too,
yeah, he did.
with the Broncos.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So first team. Well, obviously Chucky would be on there as well, but Chucky, Chad, Dave, and who else do I have there on first team? I can't speak anything about Greg Woodward. I mean, I've heard, what kind of athlete he was. And then who I do got to put in there, I got to give her some respect because she was a hell of a track athlete, was Megan Gansel.
Good.
Because I ran track with her and I saw how good she was, and so I got to give her some respect there.
We're sticking to male athletes, but we'll let a mention of a female.
And
We're
again, we'll have to do a part 2.
Classmates to have the female session, but that's all right.
Okay.
All right, cool. My first team, I didn't count Chad because to me the GOAT is like separate from the first team. So my first team, I got Chucky. No surprise there. Probably the most exciting athlete at the high school level I think Colonie's ever seen. His accomplishments speak for itself. Great at track, obviously great at football. I agree with whoever said, he kind of put Colonie on the map with the publicity he brought to the program, etc. And he was a good basketball player too. He's a really good defensive player particularly. And I think if he had spent more time on basketball, he could have been great. But basketball was his third sport, and he was still good, solid at it. And my picks are in no particular order, by the way. This is just kind of like a grouping. Dave Gamble, I got a lot of the same thoughts on that. Great track runner, great 400 runner, very good football player. His football statistics really didn't show until after he left high school, because let's face it, we weren't throwing the ball a ton. He's probably better known as a defensive back in high school for football than he was a wide receiver, although he played both very well. And Dave was also a well above average basketball player and probably the best trash talker ever to go through Colonie. So if you don't believe anything I just said, ask Dave and he'll tell you he's an all athlete. So Dave's my guy. So I like Dave. My list is more slanted to the multi-sport athletes. So I kind of have the guys like Jack Aponowitz, Joe Tremarky, Dennis Foley, who really starred in a single sport. Not to say they didn't play other sports. I kind of kept them out of my first, second, and third teams for the most part, because I kind of put them to the side. I focus more on the multi-sport athlete, but I did make one exception, and that was for Todd Orvis. Todd Orvis was a long-distance runner at Colonie. He was the best long-distance runner in the area, probably at least 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Not only was he the best in Colonie, he was nationally ranked. I'm talking like maybe top 3 runners in the nation. I mean, he was at the elite of the elite in the whole nation. So that puts him at a whole nother level, Todd Orvis. And then my last 2 guys are actually from the class of 2000. I don't know either of them at all. But I remember watching them play. Like 2000 was probably about the last year I followed Colonie sports for the most part. One of which is who Frank mentioned, Matt Tarullo. Saw him play football, very good lineman. He played at Syracuse after high school, all 4 years as a lineman. And then he was the New York State wrestling champion in his weight class. So it's one thing to be a sectional champion. That's pretty impressive, but he was legit New York State champion. So that puts him on my first team. And my last guy is a guy on my first team, J.J. Harvey. J.J. Harvey, in my opinion, is the best all-around basketball player ever at Colonie. I watched him play many times. He could play any position on the court. He was also a really good football player, but my memory serves correctly. I don't think he played it his senior year, but if he had, he could have been easily recruited for college football. And him and his brother are one of the top 100-meter runners ever in Section 2. They're either have the record and they're in the top 5. I saw both JJ and RJ Harvey. So he did it all, and he was a man amongst boys. I didn't include RJ because he graduated the year after, I believe, 2001, so I excluded him. Otherwise, he'd be in the mix somewhere here. But and from what my dad told me, he had both those Harvey boys in class. Said they're great athletes and great people as well. I don't know them, but I'll take my father's word for that. So
I've heard the same too.
Yeah.
They were good guys. Hey Rex,
right.
with JJ and RJ, did they play basketball? Were they on varsity as freshmen?
That I don't know. I don't think so. I know RJ played as a 10th grader. I know JJ played as a 10th grader. I don't know what they did as 9th graders. RJ was a good basketball player too, great defensive player. And they won a couple sectional championships in basketball together with another kid named Brian Larrabee and Lucius Jordan. That was probably the best
Brian
basketball
Larrabee,
team. Well, that team or this past year's team are probably the best basketball teams ever. So, yeah. All right, cool. Let's move on here. Let's go another 5 guys if you can. Second team, Frank.
A guy that Tony probably knows pretty well, Chuck Galusha. Not only a good running back, but a sneaky good baseball player. A lot of people don't know that. If memory serves me correctly, he played on a tournament that I think he played against Manny Ramirez down in Brooklyn for a tournament. I think his sophomore or junior year. So sneaky good baseball player and a very good, exceptionally good running back. I think Tony would agree with that. Eric Brown, a 3-sport athlete.
Ooh,
football,
Brownie made the
baseball,
list.
yeah, and hoops. Another three-sport athlete, also a quarterback, Mr. Greg Half. Hoops, baseball, quarterback, and football. Um, I also went with Dennis Foley. I know primarily he was a one-sport lacrosse superstar, but also a pretty good, sneaky good football player. I played with him my junior year. He was double tough.
All right.
And rounding out my top five, Jimmy Haas, four
Ooh,
year
yeah.
4 year play, but also played track. He was a pretty good shot put and discus competitor.
Mhm.
So there you go.
All right. Jimmy Haas, good guy. As all they were, all those guys are. John, go ahead.
Frank, agree with you on all your picks. I actually had the opportunity to play with some of those guys, baseball and other sports, and spot on with it. I'm going to go here a little old school here. I'm going to say Tony Valenti, another one, quarterback basketball player, and I believe Tony went to UConn coming out of
Yep.
high school. I want to say that too, and I remember again hearing about him. Another one. With Foley playing quarterback with Dennis and Eric Luther. Another one there, Eric and his brother Tom, both exceptional athletes at football, and I believe Tom was a baseball player as well. And then also Sean Lemrys was, all over the yearbook and hearing about Sean, his accomplishments. And then another one that had played baseball with and just remember around just good athlete, Nick Roddy, who was pretty much good at any sport he played. And I believe my last two are Phil Costello. I remember hearing his name throughout, growing up. Phil, good baseball player, good football player, and Paul Rockensteyer as well. And I think those guys
So do you have
are
five,
on my
John? Or you have
second
10?
team there. Well, actually, that's five right there.
Okay. All right.
Oh, Eric Luther's honorable mention, second team.
Okay. Honorable mentions.
Honorable mention, second team.
Yeah.
I thought there was only one honorable mention team.
Yeah. Yeah, there is, Tony, but I think John's just making up categories.
These are
goes.
participation awards.
Yeah, that's okay. Tony, do you have others?
Yeah. So, man, this is good. That because Frank, well, all you guys are bringing up names that now that I'm sitting here reminiscing. So I can't do a disservice, especially if those guys watch this. Like Matt Tarullo, I never played with him and everything, but I remember hearing about him because I went to high school with his brother. What was his brother's name? He graduated with me. God, I forget his brother's name, but I remember talking to his brother, and he's like, "Hey, my little brother, big brother, 6'6", however tall Matt was, heading to Syracuse and everything. So I gotta put guys like that were state champs. Got to give them respect. Put them on the first team. So Chuck Alusha is definitely gonna be on my second team, and I think because had he gone off to do things like Chad and Chucky, and maybe was played varsity football freshman, sophomore, or even sophomore, junior, senior, I would definitely put Chucky or Chuck Alusha up there on first team. But playing with him, he was hell of an athlete. For a kid at that age to understand how to do jump cuts and everything in football, I mean, he was so far ahead of his time. Watching what he did on the field. So Chucky's going to be there. Alon Byers, never played with him, but I watched him. But I think he definitely should be up there. And then another guy, I don't know if you guys remember this guy, but I ran track with him. And when I was a junior, I think he was in 8th grade, Brian Susser.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever hear of him?
Yeah,
Did you ever hear of him,
he's
Rex?
all over the record books. Yeah, he's all over the record books.
I remember when he was in 8th grade and he came up to run track, and in the 300-meter dash, I mean, he was only off the school record by, a couple seconds. And then when he got into high school, he blew up.
Yep.
I mean, he ended up running like 46 something in the 400, and he just destroyed the Conley record books. So I got put Brian Susser up there. I knew him. Cool kid, good person, phenomenal in track. So got Chuck, Alan Byers, Brian Susser, and never played with Eric Brown. I watched him. So there is something to be said about playing 3 sports.
Yeah.
But I can't give these people a vote. Like if I hadn't seen them play enough,
right.
But so I think that's who else I got.
Not bad.
Cool.
Rex,
All
who you got?
My second team, I have some of the same names that have been mentioned. I had Sean Lemery on. He was a 3-sport guy. Well, let me just clarify. My second team, actually, 4 out of the 5 are from the class of 1989, and the 5th one is from 1988. Because I think that 1989 graduating year, they won a lot, and I think there's something to be said for winning. In order to win, you have to have great athletes. So, and all 5 of my guys are 3-sport. I'm just looking. Yeah, all 5 of them are 3-sport athletes. So, I had Lemery, really good football player, pretty decent basketball player, and a really good baseball player. I had Greg Woodward. He almost made my first team. He was a beast. I mean, I saw him play football. He was an absolute beast. He was a beast in high school playing linebacker. I remember watching him play semi-pro football. He was still a beast at whatever age, and he was a sectional wrestling champion. So I did not know him personally. Rest in peace. But I've never heard a bad thing about Greg Woodward.
Yeah, he was a Metro Mauler, I believe.
Yeah. He was like a legend in semi-pro football. Paul Rockensteyer, another one, rest in peace. He was a really good baseball player, phenomenal football player. If you look back, he was probably the leading wide receiver statistically on that team. He would just get open all the time, make crazy catches, and I believe he's a good DB too. He would hit you. He was fearless, and he played some hoop too.
This was 80. He was on the 89 team, Rex.
Yeah. All those guys I just mentioned were 89. I mean, I guess it was the 88 football team, but they graduated 89.
Gotcha.
My other guy that gets lost in the shuffle, not a lot of people remember him, is another 89 guy, Kenny Cesnat.
Oh
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Kenny Cesnat, big guy, lineman on the football team, good wrestler, and a good lacrosse player. But very agile for his size, very aggressive. Him and Woody were good wrestlers and made for a physical brand of football. So Kenny Cesnat. And my last guy is a guy from the class of 88. So he played with some of these guys, a year before. 3-sport athlete, Mike Spolnick. He was a basketball player. He was like really solid across the board. Basketball player, really good baseball player, and a really tough football player. Tell you how tough Mike Spolnick was, because I still remember this to this day. My father, I remember he would bring me into some of the basketball practices, like, if it was on a weekend or something. And I remember there was a day, they had a practice on a weekend. This is back in the pit, hence no pun intended. Mike Spolnick practiced basketball the same day he played his last football game. So that shows a level of toughness that you just don't see anymore. So I think I remember Coach Faust saying, we don't have to run sprints today because Mike just played a football game. So that's pretty cool. Jeez. So, Spolnick, Lemery, Woodward, Rockensteyer, and Cesnat. And also I believe Mike Spolnick went into the Marines, as did Greg Woodward after high school. I know Mike went into the military. I'm not sure if it was Marines or Army. But thank you to both of them. All right?
Yeah.
So that's my second team. Now we're going to round it out here if you guys still have more picks on a third team. So go ahead, Frank.
I went also with J.J. Harvey. Just a spectacular athlete. Tony Valenti, got to go with the quarterback, and also a three-sport superstar. Alon Byers, he was a senior when I think I was a freshman, just an all-around awesome athlete. Another one of Tony's teammates, Jason Orquist, linebacker, lineman, played baseball, and I think he played hoops too. Just solid athlete.
That's true.
And my last one, I gotta go. My loyalty goes Robert Anthony Fish.
Oh, okay. Bobby. Yeah.
Gotta go Bobby. Just an under. I can't. He was undersized linebacker, but man, he played like when he hit you, you knew he hit you because he brought everything and then some. When he came, he brought it, and also a pretty good lacrosse player.
Good. Go ahead, John.
Great picks. Yeah, so I'm going to go with Dan Spinelli, played football, track athlete. Dan was another one with Alon back there. Those guys playing my junior year, watching those guys practice and play, man, it was special. And a shout out to Rich Fade, who during my junior season would buy me a 50-yard line tickets, and we get to watch a football game while these guys are in front of us. So, Rich, if you're listening, hope you're doing well. Todd Hesner, another guy that's just like a utility knife, man. Todd was good at everything he did. And then I'm gonna have to give a shout out to the Richardson brothers, Adam and Matt. Adam, great football player, basketball player, and Matt, growing up with him, Matt was a real quick story. I remember we were leaving Sand Creek and going to Colonie Central, and we had a track meet. I don't know if they still do that, Sand Creek against Leishigill. And Matt and I forgot the other two guys were on the team, and we had to go up to Colonie Central to run. And Matt started off, and the other two guys dropped the ball a little bit, and I was there to anchor going against Billy Mackey. And I'm looking at this guy like, man, who is this guy? This guy's like the drummer from Iron Maiden next to me. And next thing you know, Billy got the baton, and whoever was coming was there. Billy Mackey just blazed by. But Matt Richardson, great athlete. And my last pick, Matt Rabbitt. Matt Rabbitt, baseball player, hoops, and a volleyball player. And Matt, all around, like one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. But Matt was exceptional at those sports. So those are my picks there.
Excellent. Go ahead, Tony.
All right, so for me to round it out, now that you guys mentioned Jacopanowicz, I remember seeing the newspaper articles and everything. So, and now that you say that as a freshman he was on varsity, I think there's a lot to be said about that. So I got to put him there. And I don't know where to put Bobby Fish. Like he should be, for me, I feel like he should be on one of the teams and not an honorable mention, because he was like, not trying to compare him to Chucky Dukes, but there was like the Fishes with Bobby and Ricky. The Fishes were like kind of like the culture that was like, I don't want to say that they created, but when I saw Bobby play, and like Frank was saying, like for a guy that was undersized as a linebacker, like you wouldn't look at him as a linebacker. In college he would be like a DB, but I mean he played a lot of passion, and so I always respected that a lot about Bobby. So I think Bobby's got to be in there.
Quick Bobby story, though. Quick Bobby story.
Mm-hmm.
And John probably realizes too. I don't know what it is because he still does it to this day. If there's a 7:30 game, Bobby was usually showing up probably 7:20.
But he's ready to go.
He's ready to go, and he had there was a wrestling match for TNA up here about a year ago, and the call-ins was about, I'll say 1 o'clock, and he calls me at like 10 of. He goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm outside." He goes, "Hey, can you give me a ride to," I forget where the hell the show was. I'm like, "Dude, you got to be there like in 5 minutes." He goes, "You got to worry about it." I'm like, "All right," but that's just him. He's always fashionably late.
Yep.
Yeah, he was on Bobby's.
I got him on a different list, but I would agree with everything Tony just said about him, and Frank. Tony,
the last one.
you have
Yeah, the last one, Dennis Foley. And so if Jeff Tomaso ever watches this, or Marco Tomaso, his dad,
Ooh.
I remember hearing about this, that so in the men's locker room, in like when you come in through the main entrance, and it was the one on the right, like you go down the center hallway, and there it was like next to the wrestling gym. Okay.
The pit,
So in
the pit
there
locker room?
on what's that?
The locker room for the pit? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
so in there where Mr. Tomaso had his office, I remember on the window there was like a piece of paper, and it had like lacrosse records. And I remember Jeff Tomaso was on there because he had 8 goals in one game. And I was like, man, I was like, that's a lot. And so I remember Foley was in a game and he got up to 8, and Tomaso pulled him because he didn't want him
Oh, no
breaking.
way.
Yeah. And I remember watching that game because we were like, hey, Foley's gonna break the record tonight and everything. And there he goes, and he was drilling them. We're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're like, yep, he's gonna break it tonight. And then all of a sudden he gets pulled, and we're all sitting there like, what's going on? Like, there's plenty of time left. And then we end up finding out after, like, a little talking on the sideline, that Mr. Tomaso pulled him because he didn't want him breaking his son's record.
Wow.
And everything.
I never knew that.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like Mr. Tomaso. I don't know. We'll have to get we'll have to get the backstory to that.
Rex, so do you guys?
And I don't know. Like I said, this is Colony rumor mill. I don't know how true it is.
We need to get.
I just remember Dennis would know.
We need to get Dennis Foley on the show is what we need. So if Dennis is listening, we need you on.
All right.
What do you got?
All right. So my third team, I got DJ Rice from the class of 1991. He was an excellent baseball player, excellent basketball player. He went on to play at Florida Atlantic for baseball, which I think at that time was probably Division II. He could have easily played Division III basketball. Really, he was kind of like a mini white Hakeem Olajuwon, a 6'2" Hakeem Olajuwon. He did things in the post that his footwork was incredible. Another one, I did have Alon Byers on my third team, phenomenal track athlete and well above average football player. He did go on to play in college, I think at Maine. I believe. He was playing at Maine. Yep. Alon made running fast look so effortless, I remember. I had Tony Valenti on my third team, best arm I've ever seen on a quarterback at least at the local level. And he was a good hooper too. And from what I've heard, he was a great baseball player, except I don't remember him playing baseball, at least not a senior year. Maybe he did, but I've heard he was a very good baseball player.
And Rex, he played in UConn?
Yeah.
Tony
he played at UConn 4 years. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, so he got a scholarship coming out of high school?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Easy.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. He's probably still got the passing records. My guess is I don't know that for sure. And then I think John may have mentioned this other guy, Todd Hesner, a very underrated athlete, great two-way football player. Like John said, he could catch the ball, he could run the ball, and then on defense, he would hit the hell out of you. So Todd, and he was a good hooper too. He had some ups for a kid his size. He had some hang time. Todd is a good dude. And then my last pick on the third team is a guy that I struggled with the most as to how to categorize him, and I think anyone who knows him will kind of understand what I mean. Is Warren Giddings? He was on that '89 team. Statistically, you're probably not going to see him much based on his position he played and the role, but just to watch Warren move on a basketball court or a football field, he did it so smoothly, effortlessly. He could run, he could jump, and he could really hit. And Warren's a good dude, so I had Warren on my third team. So there we go. But I do, I think now it gets more interesting because now we can talk about maybe some of the guys we didn't put on our teams that if you ask me tomorrow, I could easily change my mind and put them on. So I don't know if you guys have even more guys, but I'm not going to name all these guys. I probably got about 30 other guys I could talk about, some of which have already been mentioned. But Frank, did you have anyone that, was kind of floating around your brain? You didn't quite know how to categorize them?
One just popped in my head, actually, and I think Tony can probably speak on this better than I can, but Dan Gremler.
Oh, yeah. He played lacrosse, football, wrestling.
He actually played 3 years of varsity football with us as a defensive end, and he was a hell of a lacrosse player.
And he's smart as hell. I forget what he got his degree in. He was, yeah.
John, did you have anybody else?
That's all I heard now.
Yeah, actually, I think I already said it. Bill Mackey, exceptional athlete. John Levy, good friend. Another one. Growing up, I remember playing at Cook Park and seeing Levy throw pills down. I'm going, man, I'm just gonna stick the back out and pray to God the bat hits the ball. Brian Gerard, another classmate, great athlete. Brian, baseball player, hoops. I always wondered too, like the what ifs. Like, what if all of these kids decided to go try out for football? I'm just saying that, like, if John Levy, Gerard, and all these guys are all on the football team, to see what could happen. Also, good buddy Art Eastman, who's like another utility player. Artie was good at anything he did, playing JV and varsity with Artie. Great baseball player, plays hoops. TJ Tremblay is another one who was exceptional. Baseball, played basketball. TJ was one guy, played everything. And then I'm going to throw this guy in here, my honorable mention, lacrosse and football, playing those sports as underclassmen up there. And last but not least, and Rex, you can correct me, Matt Negrini, who was the Christian Leitner before Christian Leitner on the Colonie basketball team. So, Matt, if you're listening, I gave you a shout out. And Rex, I just need to know. Actually, 2 questions, Rex. Can you confirm that? And also, who in Colonie could dunk a basketball? I remember going to the high school games. There's always one person that tried, got so close, but it didn't do it. But are there any hoopers that could dunk? Because I don't remember seeing that in the basketball games. But those are my
JJ Harvey. I remember he dunked.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
JJ Harvey could dunk with ease. In terms of our era, there weren't a lot of jump. Well, let me clarify. There's kids who could dunk, and then there's kids who actually dunked in the game. That's two different lists. The only person I'm trying to think that actually dunked in a game that I can remember is this is old school. This is true West Albany right here. Freddie Mac. Fred Mac.
Oh, Freddie Mac.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he dunked
Fred
in our first game at what was then the Knickerbocker Arena. Got on a breakaway, flushed it. So Fred was pretty tall. He had long arms and he could jump. Gerard and Richardson, for their size, they could dunk a ball whichever way you wanted to. They just, but they never did it in a game situation. Right. But in practice, they were dunking that thing backwards, whichever way you wanted to. They both had ridiculous ups for their size. DJ Rice might have been able to dunk, but Colonie didn't have. Todd Hesner could really jump, but wasn't quite tall enough. I can't remember him really dunking per se, but he had ups. Chad had pretty good. Oh, Dave Gamble, he could easily dunk. And I do have a great Dave Gamble missed dunk story, but that'll be for a different show. But not too many.
So
in terms of Matt go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, in my assessment of Nat Negrini being the Christian Leitner of Colonie Central High School.
I don't know exactly where you're going with that, but I enjoy playing basketball with Matt, and he's a good dude. And he was a good hooper, and he was a good track runner. He was really he didn't have the typical track build, but he could move. He could really move.
Brittany's my boy.
So. Yeah, those are some good names. Tony, did you have anyone else floating around in your head?
I got two people, and one I forgot to put him on the list. He didn't run track because he did high jump, and I remember it was Sean. I forget his last name, but he came in out of nowhere. Gross. Sean Gross. Sean Gross came in out of nowhere, and I remember he jumped like something. It was like
6'7".
Yeah, something ridiculous. Like he ended up going sectionals and states, and I think it was a guy that went to what was that private school? Albany Academy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it was a guy that went to Albany Academy, and he ended up going on a scholarship for high jump. But I remember Sean Gross and him were always like competing, and that guy ended up jumping like 6'8" or something ridiculous. But Sean
Yeah.
Gross, he definitely, because he owns some records, so I got to put him there on the list. The other one,
Yeah, I saw. I
just
was looking through the track Section 2 records, and his name is still up there, along with Chucky, Alon, and the Harvey brothers. They're still, in the top, whatever, 20, 100-meter times. Yeah, he was fast. Cool. Did you have any others, Tony?
that's
All right.
just those two.
All right. I got a ton here, and I'm not going to try not to talk too much about the ones that have already been mentioned. Maybe I'll touch on a couple. The other ones that floated through my head were Mike McDonough, class of 91.
Yep.
Him and DJ were a dynamic duo. Phil Costello was on. I struggled with him. I think if Phil was 1990, he's on my all toughness team. He could catch any ball that came to him, baseball or football. If he had played in a different year, I think he would have probably, been one of the better athletes. He was kind of, stuck in that 89, 90 era with a lot of them. A couple old school names I did some research on. A guy named Scott Abbott from the mid 80s. He was a 3-sport star. Matt Charton was a good wrestler, lacrosse player and football player, from what I hear. All three Richardson brothers were great athletes, Faye, Adam, and Matt. I probably would have bumped Matt up onto one of my teams if he had done track more, because I think actually track he was a great basketball player, but I think track, he could have done something in track.
Do you know what
Art
event he ran in
Eastman,
track?
what's that?
Do you know what event Matt Richardson ran in
He was
track?
like a 400, I think 800 runner, like middle distance. Yeah, he could run, he could jump. Art Eastman, I had all the guys from 93 out of my list. Art Eastman I struggled with because he was such a great baseball player. He played out here, Division I at Canisius. And then, Gerard Brown, Eric could play anything you gave him, and all that. So, and Greg was a good athlete too. And Matty Rabbit, pound for pound, inch for inch, might be the best athlete out of all of us. So he could play anything. So those are the guys that floated through my head. And then my last list were just guys that I thought of for just a single sport, who were just really good at, phenomenal at one sport. They may have played another sport. I had Chuck Galusha on that list just because I didn't know about the baseball thing, but I would probably agree with you guys. He probably deserved to be higher in my rankings. Kid named Brian Larrabee was a great basketball player. Nick Brooks was a great football player. He'd hit you. Kevin Gamble, this is probably my going way back to the early 80s. Great. He was Dave Gamble's brother, basketball. The one name I'm surprised no one came up with, because I was going to put him on my team, and but then I kept him out. But it is Joe Tremarchi.
Yeah.
He is Mr. Basketball for the 90s, and best player I ever played with. And he may have played some baseball. I'm not sure, but I just think of Joe for baseball, and I think Dennis for lacrosse, and that's why I left them off my list. So, and the same thing with Jack Aponowitz. I didn't put him on because I just thought soccer, and I weighted my list more toward the multi-sport athlete. And Mr. Tommaso's son, Jeff, he was kind of like, he was Dennis Foley before Dennis Foley, So those are some of the other guys that ran through my head. I think John mentioned anyone who ran track in the late 80s, early 90s. If you were on Colonie track back then, you were really good. Like, they were just smoking. They had every event covered with multiple guys for each event. So shout out to, and I think Colonie track is just historically, if you said what's the best sport at Colonie, at least for boys, I would pick track.
Yeah.
They're always good.
Yeah.
The girls were good too. I mean, they always had like a good 4x8 middle distance runners. So all our Colony female alums are watching this. They're probably like, you guys suck. All you did was just talk about male athletes. No females are getting any shout outs. Tony, you gave a shout out to Megan Gansel. So you're okay in my book.
No, Megan's a great athlete, and we'll have to do a part 2. And there's a lot of great female athletes in Colonie. Sherry Elmer, our classmate.
We should do that one time.
Yeah, no, we'll
do a list for Colonie female athletes.
We just need to get 2 female Colonie alumni that played in that sport, so we won't. We can actually hear like literally what their perspective was. But there's a ton of great athletes. Again, from that '89 team, just looking at hoops and like every sport, they well represented.
Yeah, I think the thing that stood out to me, just not based on my list, but some of the guys on your list too, is like, I don't know what was going on in '89, what was in the water, or when they were born, but I mean, they were loaded. Top to
and
bottom,
actually, let me ask you this.
sport.
Yeah, let me ask you this real quick too. So, with great players comes great coaches, and who would you guys say, just you had to pick one, say, yep, that guy, whatever the sport is, like who Rex would you say would be in your mind just good coach that actually worked with what they had and just accomplished great things?
Well, I only play basketball, so my pool isn't so great to pick from, or not, I should say so great, so big to pick from. But I like Coach Lanny. I had him as a 9th grade basketball coach, and he was a real hard-nosed guy, tough but fair. But I like Lanny, and probably my favorite teacher. He wasn't my coach, but he was a coach. Was I think he's a lot of people's favorite teacher. Was Ambrosio. That was a given. He was such a positive guy. Like, never saw the guy in a bad mood, and I imagine he would be a good guy to play for. So but for me, for basketball, probably the guy I probably clicked with the best was Lanny.
Yeah, no, good picks. Frank, who do you have?
Yeah, I gotta go with Coach Ambrosio. Had him for JV and varsity as an assistant coach. Rex hit it on the head. Ultimate positive guy. He's the guy you would run through a wall for. He's that guy. That's the best way I can sum it up. He's just the guy you'd run through a wall for.
Who do you got?
Yeah, I mean, no surprise. Definitely Mr. Ambrosio. Like he had a way to communicate where he pushed you, and he knew how to get the best out of you. Like he just, he wasn't one dimensional as a coach. I think that's the best way I can explain it. I think one coach who was definitely way ahead of his time there, the way, especially during 2 days from what I remember, was Kevin Halberian. I thought Mr. Halberian was ahead of his time because he knew when to joke around and get on our level as 16, 17-year-olds. And then when it was time to do drills and everything, like he cranked it up and he had the intensity, and super fair guy. So I'd have to say Halberian, Ambrosio, and I didn't know too many of the other coaches. Mr. Backus he didn't really know much about track, but he was a good coach.
Kachuta was out there too, wasn't he?
Yep, Mr. Kachuta was one of the and that's another list. I think probably one of the best all-around human beings.
Well, yeah. No, it's all great guys. And actually, I played for Lanny when I was in Sand Creek baseball, and then quick Ambrosio started when it was my sophomore year. We're playing, I forgot who, and he yelled at us. He's like, "Get us back to football." And I was playing defense, and we went out there, and I made a tackle, and the guy literally coughed it up, and I got the football. So I had to hit, fumble, recover, and I come back, and I hand him the football, and he just like looks at me like, wait, that was just like I was just saying I didn't actually think you would do it. And I said, here you go. But all those guys, and also Jim Shan, who is another great coach. I mean, there's a quick story. We were up at Catholic Central, and we were playing well, and it was my junior year. And I just remember he gave this speech in the locker room, and I think like we literally probably ripped off the doors and went out like just steaming mad. And it was like one of the greatest to me. locker room speeches. So all the people who were there heard it. It was something like, I wish I could record. I mean, he just, got us motivated to a level I'd never seen before, and with it. But no, all great coaches out there don't want to miss. And then same thing too with Coach K. You have a general out there leading the rest of these guys, and everyone else feeds off them, and Coach Brenheiser and all them on the football team.
Jerry.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you look at these guys are all generals out there. I mean, everyone, and even though they were part team, all generals out there. So, no, just curious. But we're coming up here on an hour, and I think what we can do, Rex, if you agree, is have a part 2, because I'm sure once people see this, they're going to say, hey, how come you didn't say me or whatever? And again, too, for all those folks out there, no disrespect. Colonie's a land of many great athletes, and if we forgot you, no disrespect, but I had to go do a lot of research to go review things back in the time to see. So, but anyone else wants to come on and join us, I'm all for it. And we definitely need to do an all-female one. I'd definitely love to hear the perspective out there. Rex, what do you got?
Yeah, I just looked through my list one more time, and I did forget a few names. I just want to throw them out there. A couple of wrestlers, because wrestlers never get enough credit. Matt Manico from class of 92, right around us. He won a sectional. I think he transferred in from Shaker just for his last year. Jeff LaMountain was a really good wrestler in the 80s.
Yeah.
Oh my
forgot
God.
about Jeff. And then Josh Barkham was a good hooper. He might have been Tony's year,
Yeah.
95,
we were
96-ish.
Mhm.
And then shout out to our boy Matty Halleck for baseball.
Oh, yeah.
He was a good baseball player. And last, we talked about Eric Brown, and I agree. Eric could play anything. Eric had a younger brother, Kyle Brown, who's a really good baseball player. So I'm sure I'm still forgetting some people. And once we sign off, we'll all remember some other names.
Oh, yeah.
But this has been good.
And actually, Rex, just to end it, for all those people listening, just Matt Halleck's organizing a reunion on August 4th. I believe 4th, 5th, and 6th. No, excuse me, August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And I think he has something in surprise for that Sunday. So Matt Halleck reunion, Colonie, Saratoga, Lake George, and then there's a mystery spot on that Sunday. So I just want to shout out for Matt. And again, I got to play baseball with Matt up in Cook Park, and seeing Matt's intensity as a year younger. Matt definitely is a talent unto himself. So shout out to Matt. Rex, you want to close us out?
Yeah. So I appreciate everyone watching. Hopefully everyone had some fun with this. And, if you have any thoughts, feel free to comment. And, if you disagree with us that much, create your own video. We'll watch it and critique yours.
Or join us.
Yeah.
Hey, can I add one last thing?
Giving some opinions here. So
Yeah.
hopefully no one took
what
it too seriously. And so if you did enjoy the video, like it, subscribe, and we appreciate everyone checking out the Colonie Pit. And thanks to Frank and Tony for coming back on and helping us out with this.
Yeah. Hey, one last thing I wanted to say. So, obviously I have no idea. I can only imagine what high school must be like nowadays with all the social media and everything. But I say like the best memories of like when we're talking about like the sports and everything there at Colonie is like you guys were saying, like from that 88, 89 to mid 90s and everything. We didn't have social media back then. We didn't have internet. But the way I think that the best memories I take away is like the coaches that were there and your classmates and the upperclassmen. We created that culture there without social media. You know what I mean? Like we were forced to hang out to people, talk to people face to face. And I think like that's the best thing I take away from those times is like you look up to those guys like, oh, that's Chucky, that's Chad, that's those guys. And what Colonie became in athletics, from that, like you said, that 89 to 95, 96 region. It's yeah, those are some of the best times right there. Some of the coolest people,
100%.
coolest coaches,
Awesome. Well said.
Right,
Well,
that's
on
a
that
wrap.
note, we'll close it out here. Frank, again, thank you for taking the time. Tony,
you.
thanks again for joining us. And until next time, we'll talk to you guys again on the pit. You guys have a good one.